Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Gimel, Daf 43 of Masechta Pesachim. Okay, so we discussed, first at the beginning we're trying to discover who the Tana of our Mishnah could possibly be. Let's say that, we'll move on. And then the requirement for women to eat matzah, and if they get kares, if women get kares, if they eat Hametz. What do you guys think? I don't know. Guess we'll find out. And then the sugya at the end of heter mitztarif le'isr, if you have something that's not allowed, but you need a certain shear, like a kibetza or something, but you only have half a betza, so now you want to join together with other things to make a full betza. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think? If you can guess the answer now, then maybe we don't have to learn the daf. Any guesses? Well, then we'll learn the daf. So we're going to start on daf Mem Gimel, about 8 lines into the page. Ze haklal kol shu min dagon. Okay. Fine. So what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said that ze haklal, this is the rule, kol shu min dagon areza over b'Pesach. Okay. So anything that is made from, the 5 grains, so then it'll be problematic if you eat it on Pesach. Oh, 1 second. I think I forgot to put my phone into airplane mode. 1 second. Nope, didn't forget. Okay. So, here we go. Tanya, we learn in the Brisa. Amar Rabbi Yoshua, says Rabbi Yoshua, v'chimiacha sheshaninu, kol shu min dagon, areza over b'Pesach, lamanu chacham meselu. Very interesting question. You guys hear the question? Rabbi Yoshua asks, that if the Mishnah is ultimately going to give us this like umbrella kind of principle of ze'akla, this is the rule. Kol shumim min dagon, anything from the 5 grains, areze over b'Pesach. So if you consume it on Pesach, you're going to be violating a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. You'll be, chayv malchus. If you eat mamish bread, you chayv kares. But if you eat like one of these mixtures or chametz nuksha, as we're going to get into in just a few minutes, so then you're over in a lab. So if the Mishnah is already going to tell us that, look, here's the deal. If you have any of the 5 grains on Pesach and it's chametz, so then you're going to be violating a lab. So then why did we need to go through all the details of all these, different kinds of beers and vinegars and stuff? Look, here's the rule. If it's from the 5 types of grain, it's going to be an issue on Pesach. Why do we have to go into specifics? So listen to the Gemara's answer. It's a very interesting answer. The answer is so that you should know their names. And why? Why is knowing their names important? Because there was a certain fellow from Eretz Yisrael, Ikla leBavel, and he visited Bavel. Have a bisser bahade, and I guess he had meat with him, or whatever it was. He was eating meat. Amrlu, and he said to them, oh wow, krivli matchilta, can you pass the matchilta, can you pass that dip? And then listen to what he heard. Shamadika Amre, he overheard them say, oh, krivule kutach, look, this guy from Israel, he wants the kutach, pass him the kutach. Came the shama kutach perish. When he heard, oh, that's kutach, okay, I know that kutach has dairy in it, I shouldn't be eating it with meat. And therefore, sometimes you might not know immediately what the contents, what the ingredients of something are, but you know that, for example, if you say pizza, it's probably dairy. So if you look at something and you're like, oh, pass that bread-looking thing, and they're like, oh, pass the pizza, you're like, oh, that's pizza, it's probably dairy, right? So it's that kind of a thing. So therefore, yes, even though the Mishnah does say, look, don't eat things with like leavened grain in it, but nonetheless, the Mishnah gives specific examples so that if you hear that is that type of food, so then you'll know, oh, okay, let me not even go there. So like, if it's on Pesach and someone's like, hey, you're like, oh, you mean that you want the chametz adomi? So you're like, oh, chametz adomi, no, I know that the Mishnah in Pesachim and Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph says chametz adomi is a problem, just maybe past like the, water. Okay? So, so now the Gemara says, the Mishnah had said that all of these things that we listed in the Mishnah are a mitzvah lo sase, meaning we whip you, but you don't get you're not chayiv kares. So mantan and the chometz dog and gomer aidei tarovis v'nuksha be'enei belav. So who is the Tana that teaches that Hametz dagan gamur al yidei ta'aroves? That if you have the Hametz of like mamish, like dagan, but it's mixed together with other things. For example, this kutach. What's in the kutach? I don't know. You have bread. Like one of the ingredients in the kutach is bread. So it's like mamish Hametz dagan gamur. Or for example, beer. You have this barley. I don't really know how to make beer, but well, I know like certain things about making beer. I know there's hops. You like boil them, I think, and then you like put them into this thing that you let it ferment in. But there's barley part of that. I guess the hops are like barley or something. Anyways, but that would be chametz dagan. Chametz. What was it called? Chametz dagan gomer, I think we said, right? Yeah. That's like mamish chametz, but it's mixed together with other things, as opposed to bread is just simply bread, right? But here we have these chametz mixed with other things. V'nuksha be'ene, and other things that are chametz that are like not really good chametz. So for example, we said like amilan shel tabachim. Amilan shel tabachim was like some kind of bread made from grain that didn't even reach a third of its ripening yet, and you just use it to like get the like steam out of dishes and things. So that's like it's chametz nuksha. It's bad chametz. Right? Rashi says in the Diba Maskul Mantana. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a little bit long, but I underlined a few things over here. Nuksha means ra. It's like bad chametz. And he says, right, te'enu roi lachila. You're not really going to eat it, right? So beer, I mean, you're going to eat, right? It's very good. And it's chametz, and it's got mamish chametz in it, but it's mixed together with other things. Now, then you can have this like, bread made out of this grain that hasn't reached a third of its ripeness yet, and you just use it to like put on your pot to get rid of like, bad steam or something. So that would be chametz nuksha, right? And it's be'en. It's like mamish. It's like mamish bread, but it's bad bread. It's bread that you're not going to eat. So who's the Tana that says that when you have chametz dagan gamur aidei ta'aroves or chametz nuksha be'ene, right? So meaning chametz, real chametz that is in a mixture, or just bad chametz, even though it's just like plain and available. So who says that if you eat that you'll be violating a mitzvah lo taseh? So that is what we want to find out right now. We're going to see it's machlokas between Rav Yehuda Amarav and Rav Nachman. So here's Rav Yehuda Amarav's opinion. Rav Yehuda Amarav, Rav Meir says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rab that it's Rav Meir who says this. The Tanyas, we learn in the Brisa, Siur Yisarif, that if you have Siur, as Rashi says, Shalom Escham, it's called Tzarkul. It's like leavening, but it's not like completely leavened yet. So, what does it say? It says Yisarif, okay, so you have to burn it immediately. V'nosto lekalbo, but you can give it to your dog, ve'ochlo ba'arbaim, and somebody who eats it, we have to give him malchus, we give him lashes. Now, hagufa kasha, okay, so this is inherently a question. Why? Well, amatzir yisarif, on the one hand, you said that this leavening, which isn't quite fully leavened, you have to burn immediately. Ama asur ba'no. Well, if you have to burn it immediately, how come you have to burn it immediately? Well, because you're not allowed to get any benefit from it. But then you're saying that you can give it to your dog, which means that ama mutar ba'no, which means that it's mutar ba'no. So like, what's the deal with this like seer thing, right? If you have to burn it, that means it's asur ba'no. But if you can give it to your dog, it's mutar ba'no. Well, which one is it? Is it asur ba'no? Is it mutar ba'no? So hachi comes. So the Gemara says that this is what it means. Siur yisarif. You got it good. Let's go weiter. So what does that mean? So I'm kidding. What it means is that there's a machlokas between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda. Apparently it's on Daf Mem Ches. So there's a machlokas between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda regarding what exactly this siur is. So we said that it's kind of started to leaven, but not completely leavened. So what does that mean? So according to Rav Meir, what that means is that it's and we saw this the other day, right? That its appearance has become pale. Okay, once you have this dough and its like appearance becomes pale, so then at that point it's considered siur. Okay, fine, and you have to burn it immediately, and that is that. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, so he says that what the siur thing is that it starts getting like cracks on it, so it's a little bit further developed, okay? So we're saying, so Sir Yisarif, so when the Brisa says that, when the Brisa says that when you have the Siur, I don't know, you have to burn it. So Reb Meir, so that is Reb Meir based on how he defines it, which is that once its appearance becomes pale, you have to burn it. Reb Yehuda, and Reb Yehuda based on how he defines it, which is that once it starts developing like cracks in it, then you have to burn it. Now, when it says v'nosan ufnei kalbo, now when the Brisa says that you can give it to your dog, which means that it's mutar bana, Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, you got that? It means that Reb Meir's definition, which is that once its appearance becomes pale, so according to Reb Yehuda, that isn't chametz yet, right? According to Reb Yehuda, it has to develop cracks. Until it develops cracks, it's not yet considered chametz. So therefore, if its appearance was simply pale, so Reb Meir would say you have to burn it already, but Reb Yehuda would say no, you can give it to your dog. It's mutar bana. Va'ochlo ba'arbaim, and when it says that if somebody eats it, then you're chayiv malchus, it means asan Reb Meir. It means that it's Reb Meir's definition, which is that if you have this dough that like its appearance is pale, so then if you eat that, so then Reb Meir would say that, well, then you're going to be chayiv malchus because it's also bana and you have to chametz and you have to burn it, and if you eat it, you're going to be chayiv malchus. So the Gemara says shamina le Reb Meir. So what do we say according to Reb Meir? That nuksha be'enei belav, that if you eat this chametz nuksha, if you eat this dough that its appearance became pale, so it's like not quite completely leavened yet, and it's like this bad kind of chametz, but it's be'en, it's like a dough, it's kind of rising. So he says belav, you'll be chayiv malchus if you eat it. So v'chol shekin chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves, and the assumption according to Reb Yehuda is that chametz dagan gomer, that like mamish dagan, like mamish chametz that is in a mixture would be more stringent than chametz nuksha be'enei. And so therefore, if we see that according to Reb Meir, chametz nuksha, which is be'en, you chayiv malchus, then certainly chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves you would be chayiv malchus for. Okay. Rav Nachman Rabbi Eliezer. Rav Nachman says that the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya is we learn in the Brisa, al chametz dagan gomer anush karis aleruva belav div Rabbi Eliezer. So if you eat chametz dagan gomer, so you're chayiv karis. If you eat bread, if you eat a loaf of bread, so you can be chayiv karis. Al eruva belav. But if you eat a mixture such as kutach habavli, so then bilav, you can be chayiv malchus. Div Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Chachamim omrim say chachamim al chametz dagan gomer anush kares, that if you eat bread you're chayiv kares, but al eruva below klub. But if you eat a mixture of chametz, it's nothing. You're potter. And now says Rav Nachman that we see that according to Rabbi Eliezer, he says that chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves is a prohibition, and you chayiv malchus for it. And Rav Nachman therefore assumes he has the opposite approach of Rav Yehuda, which is v'chol shekin nuksha be'enei, and then certainly nuksha be'enei. Right? Because Rav Nachman holds that chametz nuksha be'enei, when you have this bad kind of chametz, but it's right in front of us. It's just straight up bread. It's bad bread, but it's bread. So that would be more stringent than chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves, and like a beer or something. And therefore, Rav Nachman wants to say that if Rabbi Eliezer clearly says that chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves chayiv malchus, well then certainly, says Rav Nachman, you would be chayiv malchus for chametz nuksha be'enei. Rav Nachman, my time lo Amar Rav Yehuda. How come Rav Nachman didn't want to say like Rav Yehuda, which is that Rav Meir says that chametz nuksha be'enei you're chayiv malchus, and kol shekain chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves? Well, we know why Rav Nachman wouldn't say like that. Amar lach, Rav Nachman would respond to you, Dilma ad kan lo ka'amar Rav Meir hasam ela nuksha be'enei, because Rav Nachman of course holds that nuksha be'enei is more chamer than chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves, and therefore Rav Nachman would say, well, all we know is that Rav Meir says that chametz nuksha, right, that this siur, that its appearance is pale, we know that you'll get malchus if you eat that. But aval chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves lo. But chametz dagan gomer aydei taroves, which according to Rav Nachman is not as stringent as chametz nuksha be'enei, lo, maybe you wouldn't be chayiv malchus at all. Rav Yehuda my time Rav Nachman, and how come Rav Yehuda didn't say that Rav Nachman? So for the same reason, that Rav Yehuda holds the opposite opinion of Rav Nachman, which is that according to Rav Yehuda, chametz dog and gomer the tarovis is more chamor than chametz nuksha be'enei, and therefore he'll say that Amarlach, Rav Yehuda will say to you, Ad kan lo kam Rabbi Eliezer Hasan, that Rabbi Eliezer says that you're chayiv malchus el chametz dog and gomer de tarovis. By chametz dog and gomer de tarovis aval nuksha be'enei, but if you have chametz nuksha be'enei, lo amar, Rabbi Eliezer might not say that you would be chayiv malchus for that. Wow. I'm sorry that I have to, I guess I don't have to, but yeah, I'm kind of explaining it just using like chametz nuksha be'enei and chametz dog and gomer de tarovis. Yeah, I feel like it could be a lot to swallow it, all those words, but I don't really know a more efficient way to do it. Anyway, let's just review maybe. Chametz dog and gomer de tarovis is like beer, and chametz nuksha be'enei is like some kind of unripened wheat bread. Like it's bread, but it's like very bad bread. Okay, that's what chametz nuksha, it's bad, right? But it's be'en. Be'en means like it's in front of us, it's real. So it's like mamish bread, but it's bad bread. Whereas chametz dog and gomer de tarovis is a mixture, so something like a beer. So Tani Kavasi Rav Yehuda. Now we have a brayso supporting Rav Yehuda who says that our Mishnah is Rav Meir, because Rav Meir says that chametz nuksha be'enei Chayiv malchus, and therefore Rav Yehuda wants to say kol shekain. Certainly you'll be Chayiv malchus for chametz dog and gomer de tarovis, which is more chamor. So Tani Kavasi Rav Yehuda kol machmetzes lo sochelu. So the pasuk says, don't eat any machmetzes, anything that that any chametz, basically, whether it becomes chametz on its own, whether it became chametz by some kind of a starter. So what does this come to include? Well, it comes to include kutach habavli, right? This kutach that has bread in it, right? Chametz dog and gomer ayde tarovis, v'sheicher amadi, and beer, v'chometz edomi, and this Edomite wine that they would put like barley in it. V'zeisom mitzri, and the zeisom mitzri also, which was like a mixture of chametz. So basically, we're saying that what are we including over here? Chametz dog and gomer de tarovis, and the Gemara said, the Brisa says, Yachol ye anush karis. Is it possible that if you eat these chametz dog and gomer de tarovis, you be chayav pashet karis? So tamlom kikol ochel chametz v'nichrasa. Well, the pasuk says that you'll get karis if you eat chametz. Al chametz dog and gomer anush karis. If you eat like mamish bread, good geshmake, fresh bread, so you chayav karis vale ruvo belav. But if you eat a mixture of chametz dog and gomer de taroves, it's only going to be a lav. So man shamas le da'amar al eruvo belav. So who is the Tana who explicitly said that if you eat chametz dog and gomer de taroves, that you are going to be violating a lav, that you chayiv malchus? Rabbi Eliezer. Well, that's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. V'ilu nuksha be'enei lo ka'amar. And yet, he's specifically saying that the lav applies to chametz dog and gomer de taroves, and he conspicuously leaves out chametz nuksha be'enei. So shmamina nuksha leRabbi Eliezer leislei. So we see that according to Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't hold that chametz nuksha be'enei is going to be a lav. That is the brisa supporting Rav Yehuda, who therefore, it supports his argument, which is that the author of our Mishnah that says not only is chametz dog and gomer de taroves a lav, but also chametz nuksha be'enei, that would be Rabbi Meir, who says that chametz nuksha be'enei is a lav, and kol shekain, says Rav Yehuda, chametz dog and gomer de taroves would be a lav. Rabbi Eliezer, eruvo belav minale. How does Rabbi Eliezer know that if you eat chametz dog and gomer de taroves, that it is a lav? Well, tichsev kol machmetzes lo sochelu. Don't eat any leavening. Yachi karis nami l'chayev. Well, if we're learning out from kol machmetzes lo sochelu that it includes chametz dog and gomer de taroves, well then yachi karis nami l'chayev. Well then you should also be chayev karis, not just whipping. We should whip you in a karis kind of way. I'm kidding. There's no such thing as whipping in a karis kind of way. It means you chayev karis. I just confuse things. Why are we saying that he's just chayiv malchus? He should also be chayiv kares, because after all the pasuk says, "Kikol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa." Anybody who eats any machmetzes, which we're saying includes chametz dag and gomer de taroves, is going to be chayiv kares. So the Gemara answers, "How mibayle lechedetanya?" No, we need kikol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa to teach machmetz, right? Chametz. When it says chametz, ein ela shenis chametz me'elav. All I know is that if I have some chametz which became chametz on its own, as we discussed in WhatsApp recently, that it's possible for, if you just, right, Rabbi Yisrael pointed that out, I think, that if you have flour and you mix it with water and you just kind of leave it out, so the flour has some stuff on it, yeast on it, I guess, and the air has yeast or some kind of rising, leavening properties in it, and over time, it will leaven on its own. So, from machmetzes, right, all I know, or chametz really, all I know is that if it becomes chametz on its own, without some kind of a starter, you're going to be chayiv kares. How do I know that if it becomes chametz because you use some kind of a starter, then you're also chayiv kares? Tamalomer, kol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa. It says anybody who eats not just chametz but machmetzes, you're going to get kares. So what we learn out from that pasuk is that the chiv kares is also for things that became chametz using some kind of a starter. If that's the case, well, if that's the case, that kol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa is referring to something that became chametz by way of a starter, well then the pasuk of kol machmetzes lo sochelu by the lav should also be talking about something that became chametz from some kind of a starter, but not necessarily to include chametz dag and gomer de taroves. So Ela Taima de Rabbi Eliezer mikol. So rather, no, what Rabbi Eliezer is not learning out from machmetzes, he's learning out from kol machmetzes lo sochelu. From that kol, he learns out chametz dag and gomer de taroves. Hasam nami aksiv kol. The Gemara says, but it also says kol by kares, and therefore we should say that you're chayiv kares if you eat chametz dag and gomer de taroves. So the Gemara says, "Haumi baile l'rabus esanoshim." So when it says kol in the context of kares, it's to teach us that if women eat chametz on Pesach, they are chayiv kares just like the men are. The Gemara says, "I don't need kol to teach me that women who eat chametz are chayavos kares. I know that already from Rabbi Yehuda Amarav. Why? What does Rabbi Yehuda Amarav say? Well, the Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, v'chintana dever bishma, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Isha ki yaisu mikol chatos ha'adam, that a man or a woman, if they do any of the sins of man, hishvakos of Isha li'ish l'chol onshin shabatorah, the pasuk juxtaposes and compares men and women together for all punishments in the Torah, and therefore I already know that if there's a chiyuv kares associated with eating chametz on Pesach, well, it's going to apply to women equally as to men. So the Gemara answers, it's trich. Even though we have that statement of Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, who says that when it comes to punishments, men and women are the same, nonetheless, I would not necessarily know to apply that to the chiyuv kares of chametz. How come? I would have thought to say, lo sochal olav chametz, shivasam tochal olav matzis, says don't eat chametz and then eat matzahs for 7 days. So I might think to say, kol sheshnu b'kum echol matzah, yeshnu b'val tochal chametz. Anybody who has a chiyuv to eat matzah, well, they also have a prohibition against eating chametz, and if they eat chametz, they'll be chayiv kares. But hanenashi, but women, however, lesnu b'kum echol matzah, since they don't have a mitzvah to eat matzah, the havi le mitzvah aseshes man grama, because it's a time-bound mitzvah. It says for 7 days you eat matzahs, no more, no less. Well, I guess technically you can eat matzah whenever you want, I guess, but anyways, it says that the mitzvah to eat matzah is for 7 days, so it's a mitzvah sasesha man grama. So if women are p'turas from eating matzahs, then they're also gonna be, I would think that they would not be chayavos kares for eating chametz. So ema b'val tochal chametz nami lesnu. So I might think that they also don't have a chiyuv kares for eating chametz. So kamash malan. Therefore, we need the pasuk to say kol ochal machmetzes v'nichrusa, that anybody who eats any kind of leaven is going to get kares, to include women as well. And now the Gemara says, and now once we know that women are chayavos kares if for eating chametz on Pesach, well then it's Rabbi Nami lachilas matzah. Well then they're also have a chiyuv to eat matzah. It says Rabbi Eliezer. There's a different case that says Rabbi Eliezer. What do you guys want? Rabbi Eliezer? Okay, fine. I'll do it. Rabbi Eliezer, it's like Rabbi Eliezer, the Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Nashim chayavos b'achilas matzah dvar Torah, that women are chayavos to eat matzah mida oraisa. Shneimar, the pasuk says, lo sochal olav chametz v'chulei, don't eat chametz, eat matzah. Chol sheyeshna b'vatocha chametz. Anybody who has the prohibition, don't eat chametz, or you're going to be chayiv kares. So then yeshna b'achilas matzah. So then they also have a chiyuv to eat matzah. V'anenoshe, women, nami ho v'yeshnon b'vatocha chametz yeshnon b'kumecho matzah. Since if women eat chametz on Pesach, they're going to be chayiv kares, as we learn out from Kikol Ochel Machmetzes. So they also, therefore, they have a chiyuv to eat matzah midoraisa. Umay chazes the high call the abu yenoshim mafkas eruva. Now the Gemara asks, but 1 second, we have two options. When it comes to Kikol Ochel Machmetzes v'nichrusa, then anybody who eats chametz on Pesach gets kares. So what do we learn out from this call? We have two options. One is that we can learn out that women are also chayavos kares. The other thing we can learn out is that whoever's chayiv kares is even chayiv kares for eating chametz dagon gomer ayidei ta'aroves, a mixture of chametz gomer. So we chose to include women in the chiyuv kares rather than including chametz dagon gomer ayidei ta'aroves in the chiyuv kares. The question is why? How did we make that decision? I might make the argument that maybe why not? Let's rather than including women for the chiyuv kares, let's say if you eat chametz dagon gomer ayidei ta'aroves, you chayiv kares. So mistavra koi be'ochlin ma be'ochlin koi be'ochlin ma b'necholin. So the Gemara says, well, look, what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says kikol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa. A person who eats chametz gets kares. Now we have two options here. Either we can include women in the chiyuv kares. Women are people. Or we can include a mixture of chametz. Chametz isn't people. So therefore, if we're already talking about people, that if people eat chametz, they get kares, well then, if we have a choice between a person or bread, we'd rather, since we're talking about people, it makes more sense to include people, and therefore, that's how we know that women are chayavos kares for eating matzah, rather than men who eat chametz dagon gomer ayidei ta'aroves. Maskef Rav Nosson, Avod Rav Huna. Rav Nosson Avod Rav Huna asked the following question: what? Just because we're talking about people who are eating, that doesn't mean, right? That, well, or let's say it this way: just because we're talking about people who are eating, that means that we won't include like other foods. Listen to this. We learn in a brayso called Kikol Ochel Chelev. If somebody eats chelev, these forbidden fats, from the animal that he will offer, okay? So all I know is the forbidden fats of a animal that is fit to go on the mizbeach. How do I know that even your chayiv kares, if you eat the chelev of a animal that has a blemish? Okay, apparently it didn't need to say min behema, which is interesting. Usually min is like an exclusion, it's like a miut, but over here we're saying min behema. It didn't have to say min behema, and it said min behema to include even the chelev, the forbidden fats of animals that have a blemish. Chelev chulim minayin. How do I know the chelev of just regular animals that were not consecrated? Tamlomer kikol. It says kikol. Because it says kikol, right, all of, kikol ochel chelev, right, anybody who eats chelev, so therefore it even includes the chelev of animals that have blemishes. Now, over here we're talking about kikol ochel chelev, so we're talking about people who eat chelev, and yet from kol, we're not including different kinds of people, we're including different kinds of chelev, right, forbidden fats from chulin. So the Gemara answers, look, over there were no people to include, so we included foods. Here there are people to include women. So we're not going to skip the people in order to include foods. So therefore it makes more sense that we will include women in the chiyuv kares and not say that men would be chayiv kares if they eat chametz dog and gamar de tarovis. Now frek the gemara v'rabanan deleslu erev. So now remember, we had a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chacham. Rabbi Eliezer says if you have chametz dog and gamar de tarovis, you're over on a lav, you're chayiv malchus. The Chacham argued. They said if you have chametz dog and gamar de tarovis, right, below klum, right, pashit, you're not chayiv anything. So v'rabanan deleslu erev. So the rabbis who do not hold of chametz dog and gamar de tarovis, if you have chametz dog and gamar de tarovis, so then you're going to be potter. So kol lo darshe. So they don't learn out anything from kol, and therefore from kol machmetzes lo sochelu, they don't learn that includes chametz dog and gamar de tarovis. Well then, elanoshim minalu. So then, how do the Rabbana know that women are chayavos kares if they eat chametz on Pesach? Because if you don't learn out kol from the lav, you also don't learn out kol by the chiyuv kares. So kol lo darshe ki kol darshe. The Gemara says, well, while they might not learn out kol, okay, they learn out ki kol. So therefore, when it comes to the lav, it says kol machmetzes lo sochelu. So they don't learn out anything interesting from there. But from ki kol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa, so from ki kol they learn out. And what do they learn out? That women who eat chametz on Pesach are chayavos kares. Rabbi Eliezer, now according to Rabbi Eliezer, let me ask you a kasha, Rabbi Eliezer. Why don't I say ema kol l'rabasas anoshim? So say that when it comes to the chiyuv of kares, it says kikol ochel machmetzes v'nichrusa. So why don't we learn out from kol that women are chayavos kares, and kikol says also to include chametz dog and gamar de taroves, you'll also be chayav kares. Right, so ema kol l'rabasas anoshim, kikol l'rabasas eruvo. Mechitema kikol Rabbi Eliezer lo darsh. And if you're going to say, well, Rabbi Eliezer doesn't learn of kikol. Kol, he learns out. He doesn't learn out things from ki kol. We learn in the Brisa, so or Baltaktiru. It says by Korban Menachis. It says ki chosaor v'chol davash lo saktiru v'menu ishel Hashem. Don't put any leaven on the mizbeach. Right. Make sure that any Korban minchas, any flour offerings that you're putting on the mizbeach are not leaven, because we don't have leaven in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore. Except for, of course, the shtei lechem and one of the kinds of korban todas. But, so don't put any type of leaven on the mizbeach. So, ein li ela kulo. So all I know is if you have a full kazayas of leaven, don't put that on the mizbeach. Miktsasum minayin. But what if I have half a kazayas of leaven, and then half a kazayas of non-leavened, just regular flour that belongs on the mizbeach? So tamlomer kol. Therefore it says kol, right? It says ki kol so'or v'chol davash. So from kol we learn out that even if you have a half leaven, half non-leaven, don't put that in the mizbeach. Right, the end of the kulo, miktasu minayin, tamlomer kol, fine, kol. Eruvo minayin. Now how do I know that if I have a mixture that includes, some leaven in it, that I shouldn't put that on the mizbeach? So we learn out kikol, that from the ki we learn out also the mixture. And who is the one who learns out from kol? Meaning, if we're trying to figure out who's the author of this brisa, who's saying that from kol we learn out that even miktaso, well, it's not going to be the chacham. The chacham don't learn out anything from kol. So Rabbi Eliezer. So it must be that this brisa is Rabbi Eliezer v'kadarish kikol. And yet he is learning out from ki kol, that it's not just the miktaso, what's it called? Heter mitzaref l'isser, that right, that you can take part of the mutter stuff, the unleavened flour, and combine it with the leavened flour to create a kazayis. So that he learns out from kol. And from ki kol, he learns out that also we're talking about a combination, a mixture of leaven. So we see that he does learn out ki kol. So therefore, when it comes to karis, why doesn't Rabbi Eliezer learn out the karis by matzah, that from kol women are chayavos karis, and from ki kol, even for chametz dagan gamar yedei taroves kasha? It's a good question. We don't have an answer. Amar Babo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Babo in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Yisurin Shabbatorah in Heter Mitztarif L'Isur Chutz Me'Isurei Nazir Shari Amar Torah Mishras. So says Rabbi Babo in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that whenever it comes to these prohibitions in the Torah, Ein Heter Mitztarif L'Isur, we don't do what we had just said a minute ago, which is that, right, we had said that if you have half a kazayas of leaven and half a kazayas of non-leavened flour, and you put that whole zayas on the mizbeach, it's going to be a problem, because the heter, right, the regular, the mutter flour, the unleavened flour, is going to join together with the iser, which is the leavened flour, to make a kazayas, and that's going to be a problem. So now says Rabbi Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Yisun Shabbatorah ein heter mitzdarif l'Iser. Now, whenever it comes to prohibitions in the Torah, we do not do that. We do not add the heter, the mutter stuff, to the asr stuff in order to create a shear. Chutz me'Yisurei Nazir, with the exception being by Nazir Sharei Amar Torah Mishras, because it says soaking, right? So if you have, let's say, less than a shear of wine for a Nazir, less than an amount of wine prior revius, and you take some bread and you soak it in that revius, and now you have a kazayas of bread together with the revius of wine, I guess it creates a shear, so then that's going to be a problem. Because the pasuk specifically says mishras, any soaking of wine, meaning, and obviously if the soaking was already a full amount, it's going to be a problem. Right? Obviously if there was enough wine that was a full amount, it's going to be a problem, because then you have a full amount of wine. So the point must be that you don't have a full amount of wine, but by soaking bread in it, now together with the bread, there's enough of an amount that it would be a problem. So that's what the Torah is saying when it says mishras, that if you soak wine, so then it's going to be a problem by Nazir. So we see that specifically by Nazir, heter could be mitzarif l'Iser, that you can have, mutter things, bread is mutter, can join together with the wine, which is not allowed, even though there's not enough wine, but it'll join together to create a proper amount. Zeiri Amar says, Zeiri af seor bal taktiru. Zeiri adds to that what we had just said a few minutes ago by Rabbi Eliezer, which is that also when you take a fistful of the korban mincha, if half of it is leavened and half of it is not, says the Iri, that will also join together to create a kazayas, and that'll be a problem. Kiman, who's like that? Rabbi Eliezer, the Darish Kol. So that is like Rabbi Eliezer, right? When Zeiri says that by the korban mincha, heter is mitzdarif l'Iser, so that's like Rabbi Eliezer, who learns out, right, the Darish Kol, who learns out from Kol. Because according to the Chacham, they wouldn't learn out that heter is mitzdarif l'Iser by the korban mincha, because that's only learned out from kol, and the Chacham don't learn out from kol. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, linun chametz b'Pesach nami. Well, then let's also add to the mix chametz on Pesach, because if it's Rabbi Eliezer, well then Rabbi Eliezer says that also from kol. We learn out taroves, right? Chametz dagan gamar yedei taroves, that it's going to be over on a lav, and that's a mixture of chametz and non-chametz, right? Other things together, even if you don't necessarily have a shear of the chametz. So enachinami. So you could say, yeah, according to Zeiri also you would add chametz on Pesach as well. But ulafukim Abaye, the reason why he specifically mentions the fistful of the korban mincha is to make a point that it's not like Abaye the Amar yesh aktar lefachos mikazayis kamash man da aktar lab lefachos mikazayis. That Abaye says actually that you can, if you can put on the mizbeach less than a kazayis, and therefore if you would just take a fist, right, half of a kazayis of leaven and put that on the mizbeach, you're going to be chayiv according to Abaye. So Zeiri is coming to argue on Abaye and say no. Specifically, if you put a full zayis and part of it is leaven, so that will be a problem. But only half of a zayis of leaven is not going to be a lav. Okay. Well, that was daf mem daled of Masechta Pesachim. Just do a little bit of a review over here. So no, not mem daled, mem gimel. So at the beginning we had a machlokas between Rav Yehuda, Amarav, and Rav Nachman about who's the author of our Mishnah that says that chametz dagan gamar de tarovis as well as chametz nuksha be'ene is a prohibition. You're going to be chayiv malchus. So Rav Yehuda said it's Rav Meir, who says that chametz nuksha be'ene you're going to be over a lav, and kol shekin chametz dagan gamar de tarovis. And you had Rav Nachman who says that it's Rav Eliezer, who says that chametz dagan gamor de taroves is a lav, and certainly chametz nuksha be'ene, because they have opposite opinions about that. Rav Yehuda says that chametz dagan gamor de taroves is more stringent, and Rav Nachman says that chametz nuksha be'ene is more stringent. We discussed the requirement for women to eat matzah. So really what's this? Yeah, exactly. So we learn out from kikol ocha machmetzes v'nichrasa, from that kol, that comes to include women in the chiyuv karis, and therefore if women are have skin in the game and that they're chayavos karis for eating chametz on Pesach, so then therefore they have a chiyuv to eat matzah on Pesach as well. Then we discussed a machlokas between Rabbi Abo and Rabbi Yochanan about heter mitzvah for the iser. If you have less than a proper amount of something not allowed, but it joins together with something that is allowed to create a proper amount. So it says Rabbi Abo in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the only example of that would be by a nazir, that if you have less than a proper amount of wine, but then you soak your bread in it, and now you have a proper amount together, so then it would be a problem. You'd have to start all over again. And Zeiri adds to that menachot as well as chametz on Pesach. Well, hope you enjoyed it. Peace.